Good morning and welcome to Thursday. I'm Joe Jaquin, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. Legal, lawful, constitutional, heck, even biblical tender. Gold and silver, it is what we do. We got all of our social media stuff, right? Our YouTube pages, our podcast. Don't forget our 1360 KHNC Facebook page. We got it all going for you. I hope it finds you well today. Just a quick update. Keep Eric in your thoughts and prayers. Unfortunately, things got a little worse yesterday, so let's hope that things get a little bit better today. I'm joined with the professor, Glen Biddle. Glen, you with us today?
I am, Joe, and I'm looking at the markets right now, and gold is on fire, up $32 to $1,897. That is crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, well, and again,
wow.
It is and it isn't, right? This is just one of those things when you sit there and you look at whether it's gold or silver tied to the U.S. dollar and what's going on. You look at all the spending that's happening. Today, the White House said no payroll tax cut, but they're going to be giving out, they're trying to determine how much money to give people on unemployment. Jobless claims came out today, worse than expected. Jobless claims almost back to 1.5 million. We are hanging around that 1.3 million for a while. Really, when you think about it, go back to January, February, go back really all of 2019. Jobless claims are about 220,000 a week. To go from 220,000 a week to, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 million claims a week, wow, it's a lot. And this is not what we wanted. We wanted to see, we knew claims were going to spike with the shutdowns. And then as they reopened, we wanted to see the claims be falling. And I know, maybe I'm cynical, but I thought we'd be well below 1 million claims a week by now. And of course, it's just not happening. Some of the states are reimposing some lockdown conditions and whatnot. I don't know how this is all going to end. Rewarding failure never works. And I know that's a harsh thing to say. People are losing their jobs because of shutdowns and whatnot. We got to remember, what were the jobs that we were creating? I was saying it for years and years and years, all through the Obama administration and into Trump. Listen, we were creating bartenders and waitresses. That's what we created. A lot of leisure and hospitality type jobs, and these jobs, I don't know when they come back. I don't know how they come back. And I don't know how long you pay for these people to be out of work. And I don't know how much it's going to be. They've already said it's not going to be the 600. Is it going to be 400 or 300 or 200? That remains to be seen. There's talk of sending everyone a check again. And quite honestly, I don't understand that one either. Right? If you haven't lost your job and you haven't had your hours cut, then does the government need to spend that kind of money? But I think they're desperate. They want to give us this illusion of prosperity. I know they're saying $1 trillion, $1 trillion, $1 trillion. $1 trillion ain't going to get it done. $1 trillion ain't going to get it done, Glenn. I guess if we're going to do it, then let's just do it. Right? Rip the Band-Aid off and do it and spend the $3 trillion or $4 trillion, this $1 trillion thing. I think that's so far below what the economy really needs. You're almost better off not doing it at all.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago, Joe, Nancy Pelosi said it had to be at least $3 trillion. That was, $1 trillion for state and local governments, $1 trillion for unemployment, $1 trillion just to get out into the hands of the people. And there's one more bartender job we need to create, and that's AOC's bartender job that she left to go into the House. Oh my gosh,
I don't get her job back.
Well, it's kind of good that she's up there because she's the face of the Democrat Party. I know we don't like to get too political on here, but when she opens her mouth to talk about the Green New Deal or all these things, it's just like, wow, you need a filter. And it's like listening to middle school girls talk, unfortunately. As a teacher, I'm like, oh my gosh, crazy. So, yeah, you're right. The stimulus, and once again, that's just going to get tacked on to the debt. And it's almost like it's an afterthought now. No one really cares. The Fed is the buyer and the seller of last resort and lender, actually. So that's where we are. I mean, and unfortunately, that's a bad thing because we all know the Fed creates money out of complete thin air, Joe.
Yeah, and it's one of those things as we move ahead here. It's going to be very, very interesting to see exactly what ends up with the central bank, how big that balance sheet gets, how big the deficits get. The dollar under pressure again today. The dollar now at 94.62. We're going to talk about the dollar. The dollar now very, very close to entering into bear market territory. I think we're in the next wave. The dollar cycles. Really, when you take 10-year chunks for the dollar has been running a cycle since the 80s of lower highs and lower lows. And that trend has continued, and it looks like we're getting ready to enter another one of these low cycles. We're going to talk about that. Don't touch that dial. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back right after the break. 800-951-0592. Got to be a busy, busy day. I got Brooke and Arlene here in Phoenix, back at work. Actually snuck in here yesterday. Had my doctor's appointment yesterday afternoon, and I am off quarantine. And I just need to be careful. I just need to avoid getting sick. Very susceptible still to getting the flu again, or what do they call it? Pneumonia. So I got to mask up there. I'll ask especially for you, Phoenix. I know a lot of you want to come in and say hello. We need to make sure, just for safety, we got a social distance. I don't want to go back to the hospital. That was not any fun. We got coins coming in Phoenix and Colorado, so be ready for that. The silver's on its way. Be patient. If you've ordered silver, you're just going to have to be patient. It has disappeared. Silver's at $23 to the ounce. Gold hit a high today of $18.9870. $18.9870 so far. Obviously, the day's not over. Right now, gold's at $18.92. This would be a new all-time high if it closed at this price. The intraday high at $1,900. We essentially tied it. Let's round up there. We've tied the intraday high. If we close where we're at today, it'll be an all-time record high in U.S. dollars, and gold just following along. And we've been talking about the dollar a little bit. And today we're going to start breaking down these dollar cycles. And you find ourselves in these cycles, and we've seen it now for almost 40 years now. Ever since we've decided that deficits don't matter. Because you go back to 1971, the entire U.S. deficit was about $400 billion. Most of that was from World War II. We ran just as many budget surpluses as we did budget deficits after the war, leading up to 1971, that we didn't really add a lot of debt. We started to add some with Johnson. After Kennedy got assassinated, Johnson came in. Programs that we're talking about today. Food stamps, right? That was one of the programs. I think unemployment was one of the programs that Johnson brought in that started to raise the deficit. But the deficit was only $400 billion. And $250 billion of that, I think, was World War II. and about 50 billion of it was Johnson, and then you had the rest of it that from the previous 100 to almost 200 years. The deficit hit $1 trillion in 1981. And, of course, the Ronald Reagan era came in, and supply-side economics is what they called it. I remember George Bush Sr. called it voodoo economics. And of course, today we've kind of learned that, what, may have been. As great as Reagan was, I loved Reagan as president because he was the great communicator. I think especially today, if we had a better communicator in office, I love what Trump does, what Trump stands for. He just doesn't communicate that way. It's the greatest, it's the best, it's this. He doesn't really communicate as well as his pedigree, if you will. The guy went to Wharton School. I'm sure his vocabulary is impressive, but neither here nor there. The dollar has run these cycles, and they last, I say 10 years, 8 to 10 year cycles. And they're high cycles and low cycles. And again, all of it manipulated. And you think about Wall Street and all of those things, and the pattern is one of those, I guess, with the age of computers, right? The computer set all the things up, and you have all these patterns. Whiteside come out and tell you, gold's going to go to new all-time highs because the computers are going to buy it. Right, just like today, gold runs to the previous all-time high. That just makes perfect sense. If it breaks it, we close above 1900. We're going right to 2. If we don't pull back at 2, we're probably going to 22 to 25, and so on and so forth. But the dollar, go back to the 80s. The dollar was in an uptrend for most of the 80s. About 120 on the basket of currencies was the index. The dollar floated around, 115 to 125 back in the 80s. And then the dollar in the late 80s hit a downtrend. That downtrend started in 1986 and ended in 1995. There's that, kind of that 10-year deal. And it ended in 1995. The dollar hit a low in the 80s. So you think about, hey, let's call it 120 down to 80. And it was really actually about 82, 83, but we'll say 80. Then the dollar entered a new upcycle. That upcycle lasted from 1995 to 2003, so about 8 years. That cycle took the dollar back went back from the 80s. It got back to the high. Well, actually, just under the highs of the 80s. So the high in the 80s was 125. It got up to it touched 120. So we had a lower high, and then the new down cycle started. And that down cycle went from 2003 to really, it stayed in that down cycle till about 2014. So we'll say 2013. So about a 10-year down cycle. In that down cycle, it hit a new low that was in the 70s. Matter of fact, low 70s, about 72. So the previous old low was 84. Now we've got a new low that is 72. Then we entered an upcycle, and that upcycle lasted until right now. So from 2013 to through 2020, so about 7 years of an upcycle in the dollar. The problem was the high in the new upcycle. Let me just get my cursor on it here. I want to make sure I get it right here. Was about 103, 102, 103. So you go back to the 80s. High was 125. Entered a down cycle. Low was 84. Then the upcycle came. We only got back to 120, so we had a lower high. Then we had a lower low. Because then the down cycle came. Instead of 84, we got a new low of 72. Then we had an upcycle. That upcycle, we had another lower high. So not 125, not 120, about 102. Now we're sitting here at 94 in change right now, 94.64 to be exact. The number we're looking for, if the dollar breaks below 92.80, if it breaks below 92.80, we're going to see the dollar enter a multi-year, let's call it anywhere from 7 to 10 years of this new down cycle. So that's the number we're looking for. We're at 94.64, and we're looking for 92.80. And when you look at gold, right, all the low cycles is when gold starts hitting new highs. So gold hit a new high. Broke the old highs in 2008, right? When the crash came, right? We busted through, went through 1,000, got to 1,900 in 2011, and the dollar cycle kind of ended within a couple of years of gold touching a fresh high, the dollar cycle ended. Dollar went back up, right? Gold fell. Now that the dollar is weakening again, and we're seeing gold getting ready to hit fresh new highs here, and it's got a long way to run. If you think about the old low on the dollar, 72, and we're looking at 92, and at 92 we're at a record. We're at 94 right now. We're at a new all-time high at 94. Looks like the dollar cycle, at least if it follows this pattern that we've been in for the last 40 years, the dollar is going to end up somewhere in the 60s. And when I think about heading into 2030, let's just say it's a 10-year cycle, 7 to 10 years. So 2027 to 2030, the dollar in the 60s. Yeah, that makes sense to me, right? Because what type of, I don't even know what, the deficit at the end of this year is going to be 30 trillion or right near it. So even if we only added 2 trillion a year for the next 10 years, that puts it at 50. And I don't know that we can do 2 trillion. I don't know that 2 trillion a year is doable. I don't think it is. Plus, with Social Security and Medicare, all of that's coming as well. It's a pattern that I think is a recipe that is going to drive gold prices, and it's good. I'm not talking about 2,500 and $3,000. That's real short term, but we're talking 10, 15, 20,000. Very, very. You kind of see the case now. You're like, wait a minute, I really think 10 years from today, 60 trillion? The Fed's balance sheet will be what? I don't even want to guess. 30 trillion? Glenn, when you look at the pattern here and you see, anywhere from 7 to 10 years, the dollar has these up cycles, these down cycles. It's been very, very consistent with lower highs and lower lows. It just seems like it's a great recipe to see where the gold price is at all-time high, and you start looking at the debts and all of that. It sure bodes well for those of us that are holding gold, but what does it say about where the country's really at when the rest of the world's looking at the dollar and kind of turning its nose?
Well, yeah, it's exactly right, Joe. And when we can't sell those treasuries and the Fed has to step in and buy them, that's a big problem. The other thing is all the de-dollarization out there in the world, where people are abandoning Bretton Woods and the petrodollar, and there's now that China has its reserve currency in the basket of currencies. When you get that lack of confidence and trust, we've talked about that all week about trust. That is a big problem, and everybody who's been financing the United States and all the largesse that we have, and at some point they're going to say, it's not such a good investment anymore. But when you think about when they're all the investment in their companies, they're taking those companies and then offshoring them, and so they're kind of ripping the guts out of the United States, and it's kind of tragic. And like you said before, we've allowed them to do it, and we'd want it back someday, and it's not coming back, and that's the problem, Joe.
Well, you bring up a variety of different issues. Who's going to buy it? What about interest rates, right? Are they going to stay low forever? Or are they all of a sudden going to have to go the other way? Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back right after the break.
This is the Phyllis Schlafly Report, a daily commentary continuing the conservative pro-family legacy of Phyllis Schlafly. And now, from the archives of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, here is Phyllis Schlafly.
Harvey Mansfield is one conservative professor at Harvard University, and he recently wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal that is worth bringing to your attention, especially if you have a college student in your family. He points out that at colleges today, course choice is in and requirements are out. Only the military academies, certain great books colleges, and some engineering schools tell students what they must study and what courses they must take. Most colleges offer a tremendous array of choices, and most of the choices are bad or useless. The bad and useless choices are more attractive because they're easy. Take sociology, for example. If you remember the TV sitcom with Archie Bunker, you may remember that Archie used to call his son-in-law Meathead. The son-in-law was a graduate student in sociology, a department where students learn a lot of jargon and wishful thinking. Another college department that is pretty much a waste of time is gender studies or women's studies, a very politicized department that misleads students about life. Gender studies taint the whole university with its fantasies about sex and gender. I always advise students to avoid taking women's studies courses because they're not women's studies at all. They are feminist studies and often lesbian studies. For example, it is dogma in most women's studies departments that students must accept the dogma that differences between males and females are not human nature, but are a social construct brought about by our stereotyped upbringing. That means such things as mothers giving dolls to girls and trucks to boys. Professor Mansfield said that the universities consider all departments equal and all courses equal, and therefore no requirements can be justified as fundamental or more important. It's no wonder, then, that students make poor choices, select easy courses that do little or nothing for a good education or a job after graduation.
This has been the Phyllis Schlafly Report with Ed Martin, president of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. If you're busy taking notes, you can stop now, because these commentaries in written form and spoken audio are archived on the website, phyllisschlafly.com. Many recorded by Mrs. Schlafly herself. If you're doing research or missed a day, just go to phyllisschlafly.com. Thanks for listening and re-listening to the Phyllis Schlafly Report.
Hey, welcome back. Patriot Radio News Hour. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. Talking about dollar trends. And listen, these are just trends. And inside of these trends, you'll have days where it's up and days where it's down. It's not a straight line, right? The dollar's not going to go from 102 to 60-something in a straight line. But very clear here, we're getting ready to enter that next leg, which is it's a down leg for the dollar, and the charts say this is where it's probably going. And then you start looking at at where we're at, and you're like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. In the 80s, the deficit went from, $1 trillion to $2 trillion. And then you look at the cycle where all of a sudden the debt was, during the Obama administration, started out at 10 and went from 10 to 20, right? Now we're here in this new cycle. The debt's already 27 trillion. And I'm like going, somewhere between 50 to 60. And I think it's more like 60 to maybe 70 trillion. And it just makes sense, right? Well, that's dollar weakness. That's not dollar strength, right? Dollar strength is like cycles like the 90s, right? The 90s, the debt didn't go up that much during the 90s because, you had the Social Security, the big Social Security surpluses were helping. But overall, the debt, in the 90s was relatively tame. And then we battle these periods where you have huge additions to the debt level, and you end up with at the end of it, you end up with a lot of dollar weakness. And I think we're getting ready. So watch that number. Right now we're at 94.60. We break below 92.80, and it's on. And then we're going to be watching this cycle that's going to last anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And my guess is, Glenn, that we're going to end up somewhere in the 60s. And at that point, who knows what happens, right? I wouldn't be shocked to see a digital currency before this down cycle ends. And it may be what signifies possibly a new upcycle, because that's how they're going to spin a digital currency. And you're starting to see it now. I'm seeing these signs out there about correct change, right? If you don't have correct change, please use your debit card and all that stuff, and the change shortage. Just another one of those things to try to get rid of cash, at least in my mind.
Well, I have had an absolute ball doing my unscientific study around my town on cash and change and who accepts what and who doesn't. And, folks, this is very easy for you to do at home, of just going around your local town if you feel like going out. If you don't, I get it. But, it's very interesting to see what the games that they're playing. Oh, put the change on your rewards card at this place, or donate it to charity. And it's quite interesting how they're conditioning, Joe, like you're saying, conditioning us to that digital, because there's two schools of thought on this. There is a coin shortage, and the other people are saying that there's not a coin shortage. Everybody I ask when I go into every business is like, are you having trouble getting change? And it's 50-50 on whether they are or they aren't. I don't know if it depends on banks or what, but it's very interesting. I gave a lady at a Pizza Hut the other day 15 ones, and you would have thought I was her best friend that walked through the door, because now, thank you, I have ones now. I'm like, how can you not have ones? And it's, I don't know, Joe, what do you think about the coin shortage? Do you think it's real or not?
I'm not buying it. Is there a hiccup here or there? Maybe. I think really it's bad management, right? Either the banks aren't ordering enough of it, or the stores aren't ordering enough. But when you see shortage hit, when you see it out there, it kind of feeds on itself. It's like toilet paper, right? Everybody started freaking out because somebody tweeted to somebody else, oh, my God, there's no toilet paper at Walmart. Next thing you know, the national news, there's no toilet paper anywhere, right? And it kind of fed on itself, and everybody was on the hunt for toilet paper. And it's the same thing with the change, right? Oh, there's no
I
change.
remember that.
So now people that are, let's just say I was, I don't know, a laundromat, if there's even a laundromat still around anymore. Maybe a guy ordered a box of quarters a week for his laundromat. Now he hears there's a coin shortage. Now he goes to the bank, and instead of ordering them, he's like, give me 3 boxes. And I can see how, we're almost creating the coin shortage because of the hysteria of them out there saying there's a coin shortage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember when the toilet paper thing hit, it hit you first, because I sent you pictures of my local Walmart saying that we're good here. And within a week, it was wiped clean, because you're right. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're exactly right on that. And people are then hoarding change. They're like, well, I better not spend my change because I might need it. Yeah.
Yeah, the industries that need change, all of a sudden, what they would normally order for a week, well, boy, I don't. You know what? I better double it or triple it because I don't want to be out. And all of a sudden, you create a problem that really didn't exist. And that's kind of how I feel about the change thing. I don't think there was a problem there. And now they're creating the problem. And again, the solution to the problem is going to be, let's just get rid of it, right? Everybody's got a debit card. Everybody's got a credit card, right? Apple Pay, Venmo, this, that, the other. Let's just get rid of it. And, and of course, let's face it, it's dirty, right? And it had coronavirus on it and all that, all these reasons. And drug dealers and all you bad citizens out there that may want to keep your purchases private. Well, that's, you're a horrible person. Right? I mean, this is just the trend that we're in, and I think it's clear. And I really think this next dollar down cycle is the last cycle for cash. That's just my call. Do I know? No. Am I Eric? No. But I think this is it. I don't think we get out of the next decade and still have cash.
Yeah, well, that's all the more reason why we should use gold and silver, because a virus doesn't like gold and silver. It doesn't stick on it, does it? So it's another good reason to get rid of fiat. Yeah, exactly.
You think about the door handles and things that people touch all the time. All of those should be plated in gold, or in silver, or at least copper. Copper's another good one where the germs don't live very long. Little things that you could do to make things a lot safer, especially if this virus thing is going to be here with us forever and a day, and this is the new normal. I think that's going to start happening. Who knows? Maybe another use for silver out there, right? All the doors and door handles are all going to be silver from here on out. Who knows? Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. I got a great gold special for you when we return. 800-951-0592. I got a special. It finally happened. We've been chasing it. Wow. It's huge. U.S. $10 Liberties. Now, right now, they're, if you go to our website, allamericangold.com, go to the shopping cart, they're $1,090. You're going to save $40 a coin. And in gold, you don't save $40. You save 20. Maybe you save 10, 20. Every once in a while, $25. Very rarely do you save that kind of money. $40 less today. And I've got about 100 of them, so I've got a good amount. These are the old ones, 1866 to 1907. Good-looking stuff, bunch of different dates. Save $40 a coin. It's $1,050 on a $10 gold piece today at 800-951-0592. Gold's up $23, 18.95. So we're $5 away from 1900. If we close here, it'll be a new all-time record high price for gold. But this is just the beginning. When you think about the dollar, right? Think about where we're at in the dollar, right? We're getting ready to enter into another lower dollar trend. And it just makes sense. And a lot of these trends start with these events that usually have to deal with debt. Right, when debts start exploding, obviously this year's going to be a record, right? And I don't know what the final number is going to be, $4-5 trillion in a single year, maybe six, somewhere between, let's say, $4 to $6 trillion in a single year. the problem is I don't know how much better it gets. If 40% of all the restaurants are going to close, we had jobless claims today spike by almost 200,000. Right, we went over we 1.49, almost 1.5 million Americans, which would be more than double the all-time record high before coronavirus. And we're supposed to be, at least at the tail end of I would call this wave one, if you will. Some people say this was wave two. You can debate, was the Northeast wave one, and then what's happened in the South and the Southwest, was that wave two? You can argue it either way. Doesn't matter. But when I look at what it is that we're going to try to do, which is extend unemployment, we're already at, I think, 10 of the 50 states are already borrowing money from the federal government to pay their piece of unemployment claims. I know I can speak for Arizona. We've got about another 3 or 4 months of money before we need to start borrowing. I think by the time this whole thing's over, Glenn, every state in the country, they've got to borrow money from the government just to pay unemployment claims. And that's not talking about
Joe,
any extra money the federal government's throwing on top of it.
Exactly right. And you think about it, 40% of these businesses go out. That means that all that sales and income tax that would have been coming in and all the tertiary businesses that supply those businesses are going to lose out. It's incredible the amount of GDP it's going to take a huge hit. And just yesterday I was on a Zoom call with my supervisor, and we were talking about how the school budget is going to be short $1.5 to $2 million, and we're a very small school system. Imagine a large school system when all the tax revenue doesn't flow in. So it's going to be crazy, Joe. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Joe has got a second call there.
Sorry,
so
guys. I didn't know.
Oh, that's okay.
My mic was on. My bad. We got 2 lines open, so sorry. Just trying to get through here, Glenn. I apologize.
No problem. What I was saying, my local school system, Joe, we're at mid-year, Christmas time, we're going to be $1.5 to $2 million short on our budget, and we are a very small school system. Can you imagine an L.A. school system or a Chicago school system when you already have people fleeing these cities because they're scared to death to live there, and all that tax revenue?
Yeah, the tax revenue, every city, every state. This is why, and I've said it. I said shutting down wasn't the answer, and people don't understand. It's not just say we shut down for a little while. It's the tax revenues, the money that's needed to run these states and to run these cities and these states and these cities. It's not like a lot of them were in good shape. I mean, there was a few. But most of them, most of the ones that were, quote unquote, in good shape had skeletons in the closet. It's kind of like Tesla earnings, right? Yeah, Tesla, oh, hey, look, we did really great. We didn't pay any rents on any of our places, and the government gives us all these kickbacks, and we don't even sell 1% of all the cars in the world being sold. But, look at us, right? It looks great on paper, but when you dig into it, there's all the skeletons in the closet. And then there are states, we know the states, right? California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Michigan, right? Forget about skeletons in the closet, right? Their problems are for everybody to see. The rest of the states, though, operate a lot of these with all these other skeletons. I don't know. Then this is why I said, yes, this is going to be let's just say it's $6 trillion this year, the debt. Next year, it may be less, but it's still going to be $2 or $3 trillion a year, every year. And as we go along, that 2 to 3 turns into 3 to 4. By the time we get to 2030, I think we're at 4 or 5 trillion, and that's making an assumption that interest rates don't go higher. No guarantee that's going to happen either. Patriot Radio News Hour. Final segment coming up. Jump on these pins. Well, we still got them. 800-951-0592. Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment coming up. 800-951-0592. The Dow is down 110. The S&P's down 17. The Nasdaq's down 150. And I'm like, that's it? After the horrible number on jobs. Gold is up $23 at $18.95. Silver's a little off today. So, of course, silver's been on a massive run. Just under $23 to the ounce on silver. I won't spend a lot of time talking on silver because I don't got any silver to sell you. U.S. $10 liberties, and you know, if this has got to be this week's Stone Cold Lead Pipe lock of the week, Glenn, saving $40. I mean, you know, gold's up $100 this week. So you're sitting here, two $10 gold pieces would run you $2,100. That's a great value. You know what? Last week, you know, you're just over $2,000, about $2,050 for two $10 pieces. Gold's up $100, and you're only paying an extra $50. That's the way to do it. U.S. $10 liberties got three lines open right now. They're say $40 a coin. So instead of $1,090, they're at $1,050 at 800-951-0592. And just a reminder to everybody, gold's landing today in Colorado and Phoenix. Silver's coming next week. It's just how it is. It's a little slow going, but everything's going out. So if you got an order placed, be patient. It's on its way. The check's in the mail, if you will. 800-951-0592. That's the number you want to call. U.S. $10 liberties at $1,050. Glenn, I want to thank you again for not all you did while I was out, filling in for Eric as well, and you know, sitting here and talking about the dollar today, talking about paper money today. You know, where all of this is going to shake out is anyone's guess. But the one thing I think is clear, we're getting ready to enter into this new cycle. It's you know, that debt super cycle, that hairy figgy bankruptcy bankruptcy 1995, right? He had it right. Maybe the dates were a little off, but that hockey stick of debt is really starting to escalate, Glenn. And I think we're going to see profound dollar weakness to go with it. And it's going to be interesting what happens to interest rates. Can interest rates stay this low? Because usually, Glenn, and you know this too, right? Interest rates run on cycles as well. If somehow we get a surge in interest rates, and even to 2, 3, 4% on a 10-year note, that will be absolutely devastating for the debt, because you're talking.
And it'll also be the kiss of death for the economy, because no one will be able to afford a mortgage or any loan, and that'll just shut down the economy.
It's a weird thing, you know, because Eric says inflation. You know what? I trust him. If he says it's going to be, I kind of been thinking, can we have both? Can we have inflation and deflation at the same time? I don't know. It's a crazy mess we're in. That's all I know. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Here's the good news. Tomorrow it's Friday. Yeah, I'm probably going to put a couple of fingers of Jack in the coffee tomorrow. It's been a tough week, that's for sure. Patriot Radio News Hour. Everybody take care. God bless. Please keep Eric in your thoughts and your